We all have things that we find hard to believe, but that's not always in our best interest. Today, I want to talk to you about things that verge on the realm of disbelief. I want to talk to you about ghosts and aliens. Yes, you heard me right. I want to talk to you about ghosts and aliens, as well as how to deal with hard to believe things in general. You'll find out why suspending your disbelief often is the better option, how it ties in with your mindset and psyche, as well as how it is related to something very important, something that can help you deal with life's twists and turns better. Keep listening to find out more. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Growth Philosophy Podcast, a bite-sized weekly podcast focused on empowering you to think better and upgrade your life. So let's talk about hard to believe things. I was talking with a friend not long ago when the topic of ghosts came up. Do you believe in ghosts? How about aliens? Well, here is my take on the matter. I do not believe in them. I won't say I believe them, since I have no hard evidence of their existence, but I do not dismiss them as impossible either. One of the most valuable things I've learned in all my years is that there is far too much that we do not know. Anything that we have lack of evidence for right now, and even things that sound like a ridiculous concept, could very well be a fact in the future. Like how people used to believe in the olden days that the earth is flat, even though that was never the reality. Or how people refuse to believe that our planet revolves around the sun. Did you know that Nicholas Copernicus was actually arrested and banned from talking in public when he first proposed that theory? Even Galileo was put under house arrest for the very same thing about 100 years later. It took a really long time for that idea to become accepted and mainstream. Back then, it was considered impossible and even heretic to claim such a thing. Yet these days, believing that the earth does not revolve around the sun just seems plain ridiculous, doesn't it? We only know what we know. And at this point, our knowledge about concepts like ghosts and aliens is sketchy at best. Does that mean that they aren't real? I don't know. And since I don't know, I choose to suspend my disbelief. I choose to keep my mind open, not just because I'm curious, which I am, but also because ruling them out as a possibility can get in the way of learning something more and expanding my horizon. And also seems like an arrogant and foolhardy thing to do. Keeping an open mind is an important part of progress. On the other hand, being closed-minded can get in the way of exploring, learning, and growing. Just imagine what would have happened if Galileo did not press on with his exploration, or if Vic Hayes did not invent the Wi-Fi. It's important to embrace the unknown, rather than ruling something as impossible just because you have no first-hand experience of it, or just because it seems improbable. Traveling through the moon was considered impossible and improbable at one time, as was believing that the earth was round. However, not believing those today would be outrageous. Many of the things that we take for granted now would have been considered improbable not that long ago. Like how a simple thing as the escalator would have been nothing more than a mere fiction even in the early 1800s. What seems ridiculous and outrageous and impossible today could very well become normal tomorrow or at some point in the future. That's the thing about the unknown. We can never really tell, unless there is definitive proof to prove otherwise. What was fiction and fantasy in the past is reality today, and what we consider fantasy and fiction today could very well be the normal part of life in the future. Dismissing something as impossible just because it seems improbable is hardly ever a smart idea, especially since it can get in the way of progress. Like how it would have done if there weren't people who believed that we can travel around the world on airplanes. or if there weren't people willing to put their faith on the possibility of space travel. Can you even imagine what the world would be like today if the Wright brothers believed, like most people of their time, that planes are an impossible idea? Or how the state of the world right now would be if modern medicine was not invented, which would have been the reality if people kept believing that dealing with illnesses is out of our hands like they did a few hundred years ago. We would not be where we are today if some people did not choose discovery over disbelief. The world would not be as developed and advanced and secure as it is today if a minority of the population did not choose to keep their minds open and go against the common beliefs of their time. What was fiction yesterday is real today, and what's fiction today could very well be real tomorrow. Just look at how far technological innovations in the AI and nanotechnology have gone, for example. The realms of reality are being pushed all the time. What was unreal before is real now, and this same pattern has repeated itself for eons. And this pattern will continue to repeat itself until the end of days. No matter how outrageous something sounds or seems, unless there's definitive proof that it's not a possibility or a fact, I prefer to suspend my disbelief. Because the reality is that at the end of the day, we do not know what we do not know. So assuming there isn't something just because we don't know enough about it, or just because we don't have enough proof, hardly seems like the smart thing to do. Because just because something seems improbable does not mean that it can't be real. That's not to say, though, that you should believe everything you hear about, no matter how outlandish. Not at all. That's not the point. The point isn't to believe anything and everything. The point is that being open to the possibility is a far better position to be in than being closed-minded. Especially because there is far too much that we do not know. Then there is another important factor to consider, and that is that things are not always as they seem. What we see isn't always real, and what we don't see often is more real than what we see. Like how the wind and microorganisms are very real even if they are pretty much invisible to the naked eye. Just because we don't see them does not mean that they don't exist. However, denying their existence just because we can't see them doesn't help, but can harm. It helps that now we have enough evidence to prove that they are very real, but this evidence wasn't there for our ancestors. The same thing could very well happen for things like ghosts and aliens. No one knows what else we'll learn down the line, and we don't really know what else we will find out in the future. Being open-minded makes it easier for us to deal with the unexpected and incredible experiences that life can throw at us, whereas being closed-minded makes it harder to deal with surprises and unexpected situations, and can even make us less resilient. The bottom line is that embracing the unknown is better than denying it, and being open-minded is a far smarter and stronger position to be in than being closed-minded. I'm going to repeat that for you. Embracing the unknown is better than denying it, and being open-minded is a far smarter and stronger position to be in than being closed-minded. When in doubt, it is far better to explore and examine the situation and keep an open mind, as opposed to ruling things out as impossible just because it seems improbable. What seemed improbable and even impossible even 50 to 100 years ago is part of our reality now. And we don't know what will be real 50 or 100 years down the line. The fact is that we don't know what we don't know. We can only learn more as our knowledge and consciousness expands and develops more. Like how we know more about the world now than our grandparents or even our parents did. However, having a closed mind makes it harder to discover and learn more. A much better option is to keep your mind open. especially since you have nothing to lose and everything to gain. Keeping your mind open doesn't cost you anything, but closing your mind absolutely can cost you, and often does. One undeniable reality of this world is that there is a lot that we still do not know. Even to this day, more than 80% of our oceans remain unexplored, unmapped, and unknown. To put it another way, we only really have discovered less than 20% of our oceans. Less than 20%. And that's on Earth alone. When you go beyond, what we know is far less. Take space, for example. We have not scratched even a tiny bit of the surface when it comes to our skies, and a whole host of other things. Based on current estimates, we have explored less than 4% of the visible universe. So, two big things to note in that statement. More than 96% of the visible universe remains unknown to us. And there very well could be more to the universe than the parts that are actually visible to us at this very time. The extent of what we do not know is nothing short of staggering. So saying that there is a lot that we still do not know feels like an understatement. This makes keeping our minds open not just the smart thing to do, but also the important thing to do. All said though, reality as we know and perceive isn't a simple topic. There's a lot to be said about reality from both the philosophical and the scientific perspectives. I mean, we can have a whole discussion about how reality is a construct, about metaphysics and quantum mechanics and the whole shebang. But that will take a lot more time, so we'll stick to this topic for today. Maybe I'll do a talk about the other perspectives and aspects of reality another time. As for ghosts and aliens, and the question about whether they are real or not, there's really not enough conclusive, concrete evidence at this time to prove that they do not exist. However, there is enough anecdotal evidence to point to the potential that they very well could exist. When thousands of people all over the world claim something to be true, you cannot just call it baloney and dismiss it out of hand. When there is so much experiential evidence, you cannot just claim these things to be mere figments of imagination. Maybe there is some truth to them, and as such, it is better to keep our minds open. Don't dismiss things just because they seem improbable, if there is a possibility that they could be true, especially if there are no hard facts to the contrary. When in doubt, it is always better to keep your minds open, as that way you might learn something, and that way you don't close the doors to potentially improving yours and others' lives. What are your thoughts on this matter? Let me know by leaving me a message on the podcast or on Twitter. I hope you found this talk useful. I'll catch you again next week, same place, same time. Have a great week, everyone.